The October 14th meeting of the Cape Cod Commission is called to order, and I'll ask the clerk if he would call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Barnstable, Royden Richardson.
Present.
Bourne, Michael Blanton. I'm present. Brewster, Elizabeth Taylor.
Present.
Chatham, Lynn Pleffner. Dennis, Richard Roy. Eastham, Joy Brookshire. Falmouth, Mario Di Gregorio. Harwich, Robert Bradley.
Here.
Mashpee, Ernest Virgilio.
Present.
Orleans, Peter Munger.
Present.
Provincetown, Austin Knight.
Present.
Sandwich, Joanne O'Keefe.
Present.
Truro, Peter Graham. Wellfleet, Roger Putnam.
Here.
Yarmouth, John McCormick.
Here.
County Commissioner, Sheila Lyons. Minority Representative, John Harris.
Here.
Native American Representative, Mark Harding. Governor's appointee, Herb Olson. Mr. Chairman, it looks like we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We're now open for public comment, not on anything that is on the agenda, but anything else. Seeing no public comment, or hearing none, I should say, we'll go on to the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a brief report for the Commission today just to highlight the fact that we started our watershed tour, our 2010 watershed tour. We started in 3 bays 3 weeks ago. Last week we were in Lewis Bay. We met at the Matakees Middle School in Yarmouth to discuss watershed issues related to nutrient management. And we had a pretty good turnout there, and our next forum is going to be in the Bass River watershed at the DY High School next week, October 21st at 7 p.m. And then finally, related to that, the state has convened Massachusetts Water Infrastructure Finance Committee, which is a statewide committee looking at wastewater financing issues. And the Senate President has appointed me to that 19-member commission. And we've been working in several subgroups, but we're in the public hearing phase now. So that statewide committee will be having a public hearing on November 10th at 10 a.m. at the Cape Cod Community College. And the Cape is really a poster child for the need for the state to take a different look at how we finance capital wastewater infrastructure improvements. So it will be important that as many people show up to that meeting on November 10th to testify as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing on the Village at Barnstable Development Agreement. And this is a continued hearing from September 23rd, 2010. And the purpose of the hearing at this time is to receive comments on the draft written development agreement for the Village at Barnstable Continuing Care Retirement Community. And I'm going to invite Andrea Adams from the Commission staff to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, my name is Andrea Adams. I'm the Cape Cod Commission staff person, and with your indulgence, I'm just going to distribute packets to a few commission members who need it for this hearing. I think so. I have a short PowerPoint that goes over the project, and there are also site plans on either side of me that I'm going to refer to on...
They can't see the back. That's why I moved it back.
Okay.
Just put it back when you go.
Your indulgence, technical difficulties, new media, old media. Okay, just to orient you, this plan closest to me is of the main campus, which I'm going to be referring to in my presentation. And the one behind me, slightly and to my left, is of the affordable housing component, showing the parcel is redeveloped. Thank you. Ed is going to act as my next slide, please. Not only is it new media, it's old new media. Anyway, for my presentation, I'm going to have an introduction, project description, procedural overview, the standards of review and approval, the subcommittee's analysis of the project, and the conclusion and subcommittee recommendations. Next, please. In terms of the project description, this is a development agreement. So it's something different than your standard development of regional impact project. It's a two-party development agreement between the Lyndon Paul LaRusso Charitable Foundation of 2002 and the Commission. The total project is the construction and operation of a continuing care retirement community in Independence Park. That's again shown on this plan. And the affordable housing component is actually not part of this site. It's the redevelopment of the former Whitehall Manor nursing home at 850 Falmouth Road into 42 apartments. And again, that's shown on the plan behind me. And the project is going to be built in 3 phases as funding allows. Next. In terms of a more detailed overlook of the main campus, it's on a 25.8-acre site, which is a compilation of multiple parcels. They're currently located off Communications Way. The continuing care facility is going to be 6 multi-story buildings of approximately 700,000 square feet. It's going to have 340 independent and assisted living units, meaning they can be transitional. They can start out as independent living and move to assisted living, and a 60-bed skilled nursing facility. The site is currently vacant, so the development is going to be all new infrastructure, and the amenities are going to be those customary to a continuing care retirement community, some of which are listed here. The affordable housing component, again, is a redevelopment of a different site at 850 Falmouth Road into 42 apartments. It's a former nursing home. The current building is approximately 22,000 square feet right now. It's going to be redeveloped to be a 3-story building with the lowest one below grade. There are also going to be changes to the site, including upgrades to the drainage, the landscaping, and the outdoor lighting, for example. In terms of amenities provided to the residents of this part of the project, they're going to have outside amenities including a gazebo and a multi-purpose area, and some inside amenities including a multifunction room and exercise room. In terms of the procedural overview, the first step is to find that the project is suitable to proceed with a development agreement. This was done in 2 steps. The regulatory committee found that it was suitable in a vote on November 9, 2009, and the full commission memorialized that in a decision rendered on December 17, 2009. The application was deemed complete in June 28, 2010, and subcommittee was impaneled and held hearings and meetings on the dates shown, including one just today at 2. In terms of the standards of review, again, it's a development agreement, not a development of regional impact, so it's governed by Chapter D of the Commission's regulations of general application. The development agreement is different than a DRI in that it's a binding contract between parties. There are two in this case, the Cape Cod Commission and the Foundation. Under Section 5E of Chapter D, one of the standards of review is consistency with the town's certified local comprehensive plan, local zoning, local development bylaws, and applicable districts of critical planning concern, or DCPCs. The town is going to review the project under a separate special permit process, and although they're not a participating party, they have provided information in your packet to say that it complies with the local comprehensive plans and also with the special overlay zoning districts. In terms of other critical standards of review, Section 5G of Chapter D contains, states that a development agreement must contain 4 specific items, one of which is a description of the public benefits and improvements. The way the regional policy plan describes or provides guidance on what could be public benefits are through best development practices, or BDPs. The whereas clause on pages 5 and 6 of the draft that was in your packet lists the project's potential benefits and the things that the applicant is bringing to the table. Another one of the 4 items is a statement of freeze of development standards for a specified term of years. The term of this development agreement is 12 years, and the freeze language appears in the development agreement draft on page 6, and it's in the terms and conditions section together with general condition 1. The third of the 4 items is a statement that it will become effective only following issuance of a certificate by the Commission clerk. And again, that's in the terms and conditions section and condition GC1 on pages 5 and 6 of the draft that was mailed. So those cover those 4 critical items. In terms of some of the other standards of review and approval, they're covered in Section 5G of Chapter D and 5E of Chapter D. And again, it's compliance with the Commission Act and the Regional Policy Plan. The development was reviewed pursuant to the current Regional Policy Plan, which was revised May 19, 2010, and became effective in June 2010. Commission staff and ultimately the subcommittee found that because of the location of the 2 project parts, coastal resources and wetlands did not apply, so they were not part of the review. But the project, both parts, was analyzed for all of those other regional policy plan issue areas you see listed. Now I'm briefly going to cover a little bit about how each part, the main campus and the affordable housing piece, meets those standards of review. Under land use, the land use minimum performance standards of the regional policy plan require that development is consistent with the regional land use vision map category. It is in this case. The main campus is consistent with that minimum performance standard. The affordable housing component is not consistent with the land use vision map category. That category in the case of the off-site affordable housing component is resource protection area because of the presence of existing wellhead protection districts. However, minimum performance standard LU11 provides a way to address that through a finding that the project component is redevelopment and does not present a threat to the resources protected by the land use category, which in this case is resource protection. And the subcommittee found that the project was consistent with these 2 factors and so consistent with that minimum performance standard. The next issue area in the regional policy plan was economic development. The standards basically require development to be located in economic centers or industrial service trade areas. The main campus is located in an economic center on the land use vision map, so it's consistent with minimum performance standard economic development 1.1. The affordable housing component, again, is located in an area mapped as resource protection due to the wellhead protection districts. As such, it's not consistent, but the economic development section provides a way to address that through a waiver criteria list that's in minimum performance standard ED13. As a redevelopment, it must meet 2 of the 9 criteria that are listed in that standard, and the affordable housing component does. It meets the municipal endorsement criteria or waiver criteria, and it also meets either the green design lead waiver criteria or the distributed electric generation waiver, because they're going to be able to put rooftop solar arrays on the affordable housing component. So again, the affordable housing component was found to be consistent through meeting those waivers. The next section is water resources. And again, the main campus is on, or it will be on town sewer and water. It's using water conserving devices. It's using low impact design stormwater systems, using rain gardens and native and drought tolerant landscape design. So the main campus is basically consistent with the minimum performance standards in the regional policy plan. The conditions that you see outlined in the draft document that were mailed to you is mainly to ensure that the project as designed is consistent with all of the relevant minimum performance standards, such as the final landscape design, the rain garden design, which is very, very specific in order for them to function properly, production of a pollution prevention plan, and limits on hazardous materials, because even though the main campus site is mapped as economic center, it is in existing wellhead protection districts. In terms of the affordable housing component, it is now and will continue to be on town sewer and water. It's an existing developed site. They're upgrading the stormwater system and landscaping. So it was also found to be consistent with the relevant standards, and there are conditions in the draft document that it remains consistent with the RPP when construction and reconstruction actually goes forward. The next issue to be analyzed was natural resources on the main campus. As I noted, it's in a wellhead protection district, or actually multiple ones. So it is, per other natural resources mapping, mapped as significant natural resources area for that reason. However, there aren't any wetlands on the site, and there was a survey done by a qualified company to verify that. And the site development, even though it is a total of 6 buildings, because they're multi-story and they've been pushed together as much as possible, they have minimized site clearing and grading. With regard to natural resources, the applicant was also given credit for low-impact stormwater design and under-building parking, both of which reduced the requirement for open space. They're also going to provide a restoration plan for some degraded areas to the north of the site under an existing utility easement and on an adjacent open space parcel. They've provided physical open space through the 9.5 acres under the utility easement, a 2-acre parcel near Flint Rock Pond, and a 4.67 acre parcel, I think I've got a spelling error, sorry, next to the site, and some monetary contributions to the town. Ultimately, there was an inconsistency with minimum performance standard OS 1.3, but the subcommittee found that it was acceptable to provide the flexibility in how to address the open space requirement through a combination of means, and the flexibility was granted because the overall project provides a substantial segment of the population the ability to have affordable housing. In terms of the affordable housing component itself, it was also reviewed for natural resources impacts, but because it's an existing developed site that's essentially going to be largely redeveloped in the existing footprint, the amount of additional impervious area was determined to be insignificant, so it itself has no open space requirement, and there's no concern about natural resources impacts. The next issue that was reviewed was transportation, and as with all projects, there are 3 parts to transportation: congestion, trip reduction, and safety. In terms of congestion, the applicant's traffic engineer provided a combined impact analysis for both project components. The congestion impacts were 54 peak hour trips mainly from the main campus project, which was determined to be significant impact on the roadway system. The way the subcommittee chose to look at that is to use a vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, formula to determine the cost of congestion mitigation. When you do the calculation using the formula that's laid out in the draft development agreement, the amount of estimated mitigation cost is $133,787. And during the course of the review, the trust paid for or information was provided to show that the trust paid for the turning lane that currently exists at Route 132 and Independence Park Drive, and the value of that physical improvement was verified with the applicant's transportation engineer and the town, and the cost of that improvement was $187,000. The subcommittee accepted the value of the turning lane as addressing the project's anticipated estimated congestion mitigation cost. So that was how that was addressed. In terms of safety, again, both parts were looked at. There were no high crash locations within the study area for either project piece, and both site drives operate safely, so there was no safety concern. And in terms of trip reduction, outlined in your draft development agreement, there are plans proposed for both the main campus and the affordable housing component that will work toward reducing the project's overall trips. And as such, there are conditions in place to ensure that the requirements of the regional policy plan are met. The next issue is waste management, which is solid waste, recycling, and hazardous waste. In terms of the main campus, it's important to note that, again, it's in a wellhead protection district, so there are concerns about hazardous materials getting into the water supply. Because it is a healthcare-related type of use, or at least part of it is, the skilled nursing facility, and people may be coming there with potentially hazardous materials as residents. There are conditions in place to ensure that during construction there's a way to address any potential releases, and there's also plans in place during the operational phases to ensure that the water supply is protected. In terms of solid waste management, there are also conditions there requiring that and recycling during construction and the operational phases. An important component of solid waste is food waste. I'd note that the main campus has a dining facility, so they may need to establish a composting program if they generate more than 225 tons of compostable material per year, which is what is defined as significant. In terms of the affordable housing component, it doesn't have a dining facility, it's apartments, so that particular requirement doesn't apply. And there are conditions in place to ensure plans are in place for the construction and operational phases, again, to address construction waste management and recycling. And in terms of hazardous materials, the development agreement requires an educational flyer be created for the residents of the affordable housing component to inform them of the recycling and household hazardous waste management opportunities at the town transfer station. The next issue is energy, and I'd note that this applies to both components again, and both projects are still somewhat in the design phase, but there were indications during the review that it would include alternative energy generation methods, particularly solar arrays. So in order to ensure that the project complies with the regional policy plan, the draft development agreement includes a variety of conditions to do this at either the building permit or certificate of use and occupancy phase. There's two more sections, one of which is affordable housing. Again, it's based off of the size of the main campus, which is 400 total units. Again, 340 independent assisted living and a 60-bed skilled nursing. So the affordable housing requirement for this project is 40 units. The applicant chose to meet it through redevelopment of the off-site affordable housing piece into 42 units so that number is met. They're achieving the requisite number of units off-site. In terms of looking at the units, there are 5, or the units have to be comparable, and there are 5 criteria to determine if they are. In terms of unit size and mix and amenities, the subcommittee found that the 2 are comparable. In terms of 2 other criteria, target population and 10-year ownership model, they're not comparable, but the subcommittee chose to grant flexibility, particularly on the target population criteria, because the project as a whole provides a substantial segment of the population the ability to have affordable housing. And there are other conditions in place to ensure that the project both parts continue to be built as designed so that it meets the other comparability criteria. The last regional policy plan issue area that was analyzed is community character. In terms of the main campus, there was no significant historical cultural resources on the site. The buildings are articulated, multi-story with parking underneath using native landscaping. So it's really largely consistent with the regional policy plan requirements. In terms of the affordable housing component, again, no significant concerns from Mass Historical Commission. The redevelopment is going to improve the site, particularly with respect to drainage, the building facade, the landscaping, and the parking. So it, again, given that it is redevelopment, is consistent with the regional policy plan requirements. The conditions in the draft development agreement are just to ensure that the project is built as designed. In conclusion, what I'd like to do is go over with you briefly some changes to the draft development agreement and the draft findings. In your packet, you should have a series of pages. They all have different numbers. I didn't make another full copy. I just made copies of those pages for you. What I'm looking at across the top says draft terms and conditions. And the first page is page 3. You should see a change to add today's date because the subcommittee meeting met at 2 o'clock today. On page 4, the addition of a semicolon at the bottom of the last whereas clause. And then under item number 1, under now therefore, the addition of the word the foundation, its successors or assigns. On page 5, the change is to item number 4. It basically allows the affordable housing component to be built either by the foundation or by another party, so long as that other party continues to follow the requirements of the development agreement. The next change is on page 7, and it's a strike of the words at a minimum out of general condition 5. The next change is on page 14 under WPH OSRC1, and it's to remove language relating to revegetation and restoration of the Flint Rock parcel. That's not necessary because that parcel is not developed at this point. And the last change is a change to one of the conditions that clarifies that the bike path easement is essentially on the 9-acre open space area under the utility easement. All of these changes were reviewed with the applicant at today's subcommittee meeting at 2. They were also reviewed with the Commission subcommittee. They basically endorsed what I just read for you. The other change I would note, which was also reviewed with the applicant and the subcommittee today, is to the draft findings. It's one change. It's page 8 to finding 11. It says alternative energy, and Christie Senatori, our Chief Regulatory Officer, was good enough to point out that it should actually say renewable energy generation facilities to be consistent with the rest of the document. Again, both of these changes were reviewed with the subcommittee. The subcommittee ultimately voted to recommend to you that you approve the amended version, as I've just indicated it to you, and the applicant's representative, Mr. Thompson, also signed a draft development agreement showing these changes, which is one of the things that they are required to do. The representative participating party is required to do. So that's all I have at this point. Those are the conclusions and recommendations of the subcommittee. Again, they voted to recommend to you to approve the amended development agreement, and we have commission staff here to answer any questions.
Any commission members have any questions at this time? Mr. Harris?
Thank you. Andrea?
Sir.
There's an indication there's 9.5 acres of open space under the utility lines. Is that owned by the developer, or is that something that's owned by Instar?
I believe the applicant can address it, but I believe there's an easement.
Good afternoon. Mr. Harris, my name is Ron Jansen, and I am legal counsel, a special legal counsel to the foundation. The easement area itself is actually owned by the foundation.
Okay.
Instar merely has an easement over it, so we have the predominant fee ownership of the area that is the 9.5 acres of open space that you alluded to.
All right, thank you. I just want to be sure that the open space and the utilization of it was still available. The other, the junior moment? Wasn't
You can have another turn if you want to take it.
okay.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to say? Yes, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I'd like someone, either Andrea or Heather, to explain what happened to the 28.38 acres of open space. Looks to me like we're actually getting 11.5 because the 4.67 can be used for wind energy turbines or photovoltaics, and it looks to me like we're down to 11.5 instead of 28, and this is the first time I've ever seen money given for water infrastructure instead of buying open space or protecting open space. I'm curious how that protects wildlife and plant habitat. And is this something we're going to start doing in the future instead of actually protecting open space?
Okay. There are two questions there. Go ahead.
A whole bunch of them.
Hi, for the record, Heather Malthroy, Natural Resources Specialist. I guess I'll sort of sum up my comments by saying that this is an unusual approach to open space protection. Through the development agreement process, the subcommittee found that this was an appropriate way to meet the open space requirements, and as Andrea indicated, through invoking the flexibility allowed through the development agreement process, found that they could meet the requirements of OS 1.3. I can try to parse out the actual elements that get us to the actual 32-point-something acres that were required for this project. Starting with those 32.66 acres, they received 2 credits. One was approximately 3.6 acres that was provided as underground parking. And they should be really applauded for that effort, I think. This is the first project where I've seen underground parking provided, and not only did it reduce the total area of their, that the project occupies on the ground, it, provide for a condenser site development and, and in the end, reduce their open space requirements. The other credit that they received was approximately 0.7 acres for the provision of low-impact design stormwater management facilities on the site. There is a credit that is available at the discretion of, it may not be at the discretion of the commission, it may be written into the actual MPSs, for proponents that do low-impact design within wellhead protection areas. It's really an incentive to get that, that best stormwater treatment possible in our wellhead protection areas. So they should be applauded for that as well. So that brings us down to the 28 some odd acres. As you noted, there is the 9.5 acres on the project site itself that will be protected through conservation restriction. That is just north, it's sort of sandwiched between the development area of the site and Route 6. There is an additional 2 acres off-site on Flint Rock Pond, which is nearby within the Independence Park area. The parcel is an excellent parcel. It's mapped for rare species habitat. It fronts on Flint Rock Pond, which is one of the coastal plain ponds as part of the Hyannis Coastal Plain Ponds Complex, recognized as a sort of critical habitat area in general for rare species and others. So that's an excellent contribution. The 4.6 acre offsite parcel, which is in proximity to the project site, is adjacent to protected open space that the town currently holds under the Conservation Commission. And it is presently cleared of any vegetation. However, it is located within the wellhead protection area for the well, whichever well it is nearby. Barnstable District wells, the wellhead protection area. They propose to revegetate that site, and the result will, and permanently protect it, and the result will be permanently protected open space adjacent to existing protected open space, in addition to which they're providing a bike easement through that parcel. The bike easement is consistent with the town of Barnstable's plans to extend the rail trail through town, connecting with the Yarmouth end at Willow Street, west to Route 132. The exact location of the easement is yet to be determined, but they provide for that access through that site. As you noted, the development agreement allows for 1 acre of that 4.6 acres to be utilized as for renewable energy development at some point in the future. While this is not completely consistent with the open space requirements, given the use of the site presently and the fact that it will be revegetated and that any renewable energy development on that site could only go forward provided it would not impact wellhead protection interests, the subcommittee found that that was also consistent with the open space interests. So that brings us to, I think, down to 12 acres remaining. The applicant proposed that a total of $1 million that they have previously provided to the town of Barnstable for various water supply improvement projects might reasonably be accepted as open space mitigation on this site for this project. Those that $1 million was translated into roughly 12 acres through our calculation for the value of off-site open space or cash contributions for open space as detailed in the technical bulletin, and that's worked out to approximately $87,000 an acre in the town of Barnstable per the calculation. So I believe that is the accounting. The subcommittee reviewed this. They had a lot of long and hard conversations about it. I don't think it was a trivial decision on their part, and they did find that in the collected mitigation that was being provided would meet that open space interest of the regional policy plan.
Ms. Elizabeth, follow-up?
Okay, you still haven't explained to me how the contributions for the water supply infrastructure, which normally would come under mitigation for water resources, what that has to do with open space. Was it used to buy land? I mean, I'm really troubled by this, and I think it's setting a precedent that I don't like the road we're going down here at all. And the credit for land over underground parking, I applaud underground parking, but what's above it? Forested area or lawn?
No, buildings.
So how is that helping open space, creating open space?
They're reducing their open space requirement, and they're reducing their actual impact on the ground.
Oh, so that's not coming off of 32. Your 32 should have been lower to begin with, because their total site impact is less.
They get, in the interest of promoting underground parking, which, as I mentioned, this is the first project that's proposed it. I agree with your rationale, but the RPP actually goes beyond and provides a credit as an incentive.
All right, I still don't understand the $1 million water infrastructure as being a way to protect open space. And I think it's in the wrong place, and I do not like this pathway that we're hitting on at all.
I don't know that I have much to add on that front, only that through this development agreement process, I don't think this need be seen as a precedent for any other future open space that might be required of an applicant.
Joanne? Excuse me, Joanne?
I was going to say, if Paul wanted to speak first, I'll yield.
All right, excuse me, did you want to speak?
Briefly to Elizabeth's question here. This is a development agreement, so a flexibility clause was used. I don't think you wouldn't see this in the course of a DRI decision. The reason why what triggered the review in the open space requirement was the location of the project in a significant natural resource area. The significant natural resource that was protected, that was identified in that area, was actually wellhead protection. So it had a water basis to it. So I think that was why we felt use of the flexibility clause to accept sort of a cash payment for water protection and break it down into components, how much what the equivalent open space requirement would have been was appropriate in this instance. And so I think that's what the subcommittee considered.
Okay.
Thank you. Joanne?
Thank you. I took some notes. As a member of the subcommittee, I think it's important that you hear from the subcommittee, and I'll start with one of my notes is that we had an excellent chair of that committee who lended itself to answering all questions and providing information. Some of the notes that I wrote down when Andrea was speaking is that from the applicant's side, the thorough understanding of the process to me and the preparation was a benefit for me as a subcommittee member in order to understand the process and to gather the information at hand, because as you can see, this is a huge project. Their positive interaction with staff is in that when we would ask questions such as my colleague Elizabeth has asked, that the in-depth response to that by staff and the deliberation and discussion and questions by the subcommittee was very interactionary and specific to the questions. There's a lot of information up there. The diligence of the applicant to provide the information and relative information that we would go from one meeting to the next, that either they worked out something with staff to a specific to give us an answer. As far as staff is concerned, helping the committee and the understanding, and also having on the agenda, working with the town personnel, their bylaws, zoning changes, their safety officers, that was very specific and lengthy. The sensitivity and the scrutiny of the material before us by the staff was helpful to me. They were providing us, and with some teaching, the proper motions and helping me with the process, which ended up by the protection for all parties that are impacted by this development. Now, to go back, we physically visited both sites. There were two campuses. We saw the size and kept the focus as to what was going to be on that property. In the final analysis, I felt that it was all pluses, that all parties had the same goals, was to provide a development. I wrote this down, that, in a bullet form, fills the needs of the community, and we did hear from the town on that, that there was a willingness to move forward by the applicant within the parameters that are written in the DA. No doubt, this is a huge endeavor. And I end up with, we certainly were aware of the past performance of the applicant, and I ended up, and like you heard, we just finished with finalizing some other parts of it that had come up from the last meeting, is that to my fellow colleagues, I tell you that I have the utmost trust that this applicant will fulfill good vision and has the ability to build with excellence and also bring pride to all involved and who may benefit from this project. And as you are all much more knowledgeable than I am, that you know from economic and water resource, the whole ball of wax that is up there. So I just wanted to add that so that you had the information and know the hard work that was done under the leadership of our chair. Thank you.
Any other commission member have a comment? John?
I now remember, but I almost forgot.
Is your microphone on?
My microphone is on. I noted that there is a provision for assignment of this development project should the original contractor is not able to complete. And my only question is, should this agreement include a provision that the original developer inform the commission that they are going to assign this to someone else? Andrea?
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Again, for the record, Andrea Adams. The development agreement contemplates assignment. It's in some of the original terms, and as noted in subclause 4, that specifically allows for the affordable housing component to be built by someone other than the foundation. I'm not troubled by there not being language in the development agreement that if the foundation dissolves or assigns it to another entity, we won't know about it. there is no way for the development to proceed without some entity asking the Cape Cod Commission for a preliminary certificate. And I believe at that point they'll have to show that they have an interest in the property or the project. We don't randomly grant preliminary certificates to individuals. They have to show, I own it, somebody sold it to me, somebody assigned it to me, and I know that from having worked, now granted, on other projects, other developments of regional impact, but we've had a couple of those assigned from the original proponent to somebody else, either through a sale, and that person or entity will come in and show to us that they have legal control of the property. So I'm not troubled by that.
Thank you. I didn't find that in there. That's why I asked the question. I looked for it, and I couldn't find it. So if you say that the provisions are there, that a party that is not a party of this agreement will in fact be obligated to let the commission know what they're doing, then I'm happy.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good question, good answers. Is there anybody else that has a comment or a question? Excuse me, please. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just for the purpose of clarification. Would you come to the microphone, please? Certainly. Mr. Chairman, through you and to Mr. Harris, just for purposes of clarification, any assignments on, you look at page 5 of the development agreement must be approved by the Commission. So before, if it were in fact the Foundation's intent at some point in time to assign its rights under this contract or transfer the development rights, it would require prior approval of the Commission. And we asked for that particular language because this is going to be a project built in 3 phases, 744,000 square feet. It could take upwards of 10 and maybe even 12 years to complete the project. A lot can happen during that period of time. But again, I stress our agreement that we've worked out with the subcommittee does require prior Commission approval of any assignments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did miss it.
Are there any further comments or questions from the members of the Commission? Seeing none, we will go on to ask for comments from the applicant or their representative.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name is Ron Jansen. I am special counsel to the Lyndon LaRusso Foundation of 2002, the applicant. We've been before you in the past year seeking approval to go forward on the basis of a development agreement, which is what you currently have as approved by your subcommittee. I have members of my team present today. I would just like to briefly introduce them to you. They may want to make some brief comments as well as respond in particular to specific questions that you may have regarding this project. First of all, I'd like to introduce Mr. Mark Thompson. Mr. Thompson is the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Lyndon LaRusso Foundation, the applicant. And sitting next to him is Mr. Andrew Court, who is his assistant and also is a representative from Independence Park, Inc., also one of the people that have an interest in this project. In addition, we have Mr. Ron Davis. Mr. Davis is our project financial analyst, and he's provided the Commission with a fiscal impact analysis for your review for both aspects of this project. In addition to Mr. Davis, we have Mr. Steve Mack. Mr. Mack is our project facilitator and has been involved in many large-scale projects of this type. In addition, we have Mr. Ed Pesce, who has served us throughout this process as our project engineer. We also have Bruce Devlin, who is a project architect draftsman. He's worked specifically on the affordable component, but is also here to answer questions you may have on the main campus. And finally, we have Reverend Herb Taylor. Mr. Taylor is our consultant from Deaconess Abundant Life. He is their CEO, and he is prepared to address any specific questions you may have regarding continuing care retirement communities. Now, briefly, I don't want to gild the lily. I'll just go over some things, hopefully, that without being redundant, that I thought might need to be amplified. And again, we are glad to address any questions that you may have. The project itself, I need to emphasize, are you all familiar with the project site, where it's located? It's located, for the most part, and it is in Independence Park. It adjoins Route 6. a little bit over 25 acres, almost 26 acres in size overall, as Andrea explained to you. There is a very important part of this site that I don't think was amplified, and that is the site is zoned by the town of Barnstable as industrial. Now, in the industrial use in the town of Barnstable is the most expansive use allowed as of right. For example, a minimum of 240 units of housing could be built on this site as a matter of right under local zoning. I realize it would probably require the Commission's review, but I want to talk to you about as of right. Retail stores can be allowed as of right. This type of use, a retirement community, we feel, is a much less intense use than any other type of use that could exist on this site. So I thought I would just emphasize that to you. The project will be built in phases. Currently, we're proposing 3 phases. There'll be 340 units of independent or assisted living and up to a 60-bed skilled nursing facility. The purpose behind this project, in terms of combining each of these 3 elements, is to allow people to age in place so they can transition from independent living to assisted living, and finally to skilled nursing. There'll be 6 buildings in this phase, as Andrea has explained to you. One of the buildings will be called a Commons building. That building will have the amenities that in part help a continuing care retirement community to be a self-enclosed community. They'll have a restaurant there, they'll have dining facilities, they'll have a nursing facility, they'll have a spa, they'll have a workshop, they'll have an auditorium. These are the types of facilities that we have discovered seniors look for so that they conduct the majority of what they're doing on site. Not to mention the fact that we will in fact have transportation for the people on site to go to and from various places. There will be on-site parking. That issue was not brought up. There'll be 566 on-site parking spaces, and that is what is required under the Town of Barnstable zoning bylaw. We will not have 1 space more than what is required. And out of those 566 spaces, 349 will be underground. I believe this will probably be the first and probably the largest underground parking facility here in Barnstable County. We will be containing all of our runoff on site. The project will be connected to the municipal sewer. The Barnstable Fire District Water Department has committed to provide us with our water supply as well as our fire protection to the site. We have received, as you have probably seen in your packet, several prior approvals. I just would like to delineate them for each of you to know what we've been through. And I think that it may help each of you to understand that when I was going through at least my notes last night, we have been involved in this process for this particular project for almost 5 years. We have started the actual formal process with you people quite some time ago. We filed in May, of course, but we have been meeting with staff of your commission for well over a year in anticipation of getting this project go forward. So it's not an afterthought, it's not something that happens spontaneously. A lot of effort has gone into this particular project, but let me give you an example. We've met with the Town Department of Public Works. We have a letter from them regarding sewer capacity and our ability to tie this project into the town sewer. We've met with the Barnstable Fire District Water Department. They've given us a letter saying they'll provide water to the site. They've also given us a letter indicating they have no interest in acquiring any portion of this land for wellfield protection. We have corresponded with MEPA. We have filed an environmental notification form, and on November 6th of last year, they made a determination that this does not require an environmental impact report. We've corresponded with the Mass Department of Transportation because, if many of you know, this project is fairly in close proximity to the Barnstable Municipal Airport. They have indicated to us in a letter dated March 28th of this year that this project does not violate any of their regulations. We contacted the Federal Aviation Administration. The letter issued on January 5th of '09, they indicated that there's no hazard to navigation. We've contacted the Mass Historical Commission. On December 29th of '08, they made a determination that our project is unlikely to affect significant historical or architectural resources. There was a natural resources inventory conducted on site by Sebastian Associates. They indicate that this project is not within any estimated habitat or primary habitat. We also, as you know, require approval from the town of Barnstable. We'll have to go through a site plan approval process as well as a special permit for both phases of this project, the CCRC, which is the retirement community, and the affordable component. At one of the subcommittee meetings we had during this year, the town manager for the town of Barnstable, Mr. John Klim, appeared at the subcommittee and fully endorsed this project. So we have the endorsement of the town. And in support of that endorsement, just so you'll know, the town created this special overlay district in this particular area, allowing us to construct not just the retirement community, but also the proposed affordable component located on Falmouth Road. Now, this project comes about because of the wishes of the widow of Mr. Paul LaRusso. I don't know if all of you here know of Mr. LaRusso. Mr. LaRusso was the founder of Independence Park, Inc. and was the primary trustee of the foundation that's currently before you. Mr. LaRusso died 3 years ago. His widow, Lila, still lives. It was her wish that a facility of this type could be constructed somewhere on the Cape so that she would not have to go through what she went through when Mr. LaRusso had his debilitating stroke. She'd have to go to and from the facility that he was at, and she had to pay a significant sum of money every month for his care and well-being. She didn't care about the money, obviously, in that regard, but she didn't want other people without the resources to go through it. So this is really her wish. For those of you who don't know about the LaRusso Foundation, not that this is part of your deliberation, I need to stress to you that whatever money comes into this particular project that goes to the foundation will be used for public benefit projects. The foundation historically is the largest private charity here on Cape Cod. They have doled out more than $75 million worth of benefits to this community, including the Cardiac Care Center that some of you may have some familiarity with at the Cape Cod Healthcare, the emergency room, the new training facility at the hospital, the technology center at Cape Cod Community College, Cape YMCA. The beat just goes on and on and on. Unlike many people who are in the development industry, which the foundation is not, their money goes back directly into the community. And I think that is an important consideration. Project benefits, I would like to just go over just briefly with you, and I'll conclude. The location of this project probably couldn't be better. If you're familiar with this land, it's a very difficult parcel of land to do anything with. The applicant has actually been approached by some large box store chains that would love to have this parcel because of its proximity to Route 6. We have declined because we feel it's too intensive a use. So we have a piece of land that you can't do much with unless you want to have a box store, which would be much more intense. The project itself, in terms of how it's scoped out, is somewhat environmentally friendly. If you look at the conditions in the development agreement, and you see how the water supply, which is the main concern because of it's an SNRA, because of water concerns, we're addressing those concerns head on. All drainage is contained on site. We're hooked up to the town sewer. We have a waste management plan in place. We have a turf management plan in place, a pesticide management. It just goes on and on. We're doing everything to protect the underlying resource. In addition, this facility, which will service people as they age, as we all will do hopefully, is located within 1.5 miles of Cape Cod Hospital, within 1/4 of a mile of the new proposed Cape Cod Ambulatory Center on Addicts Way, within 1/2 mile of the Cape Cod Mall, and within 1/2 mile of Route 6, within 1/4 mile of Route 132. So access to the site is going to be relatively easy, and the people living in the site are going to have access to the amenities that they will need to get by on, should that be necessary. Job creation. I'm going to let Mr. Davis address that. But not to mention the construction jobs that will be created over this period of time, which will be significant. We anticipate employing, when all 3 phases are completed, upwards of 110 people full-time with good, meaningful year-round employment. In addition to that, the residents of this facility will be going out and spending money in the local community for whatever reasons, whether it's the mall, whether it's the local beautician, whether it's buying another car. We also intend to utilize the resources of Cape Cod Community College to help us develop an employee plan as well as training for the people who will be working at this facility, especially people servicing those who are elderly. I would also like to point out to you that there is a significant need for a project of this type. The demographic studies that we have show that the senior population is expanding almost exponentially as we speak. The baby boomers are becoming of age. And Reverend Taylor is going to be addressing you on that issue regarding what our future needs are going to be. But there are several recent articles which say that this type of a project, this type of housing, is certainly something that is going to be strongly needed both now and in the immediate future. Your development agreement and your findings show that we basically comply with not just the most of your minimum performance standards under the regional policy plan, but over a dozen best development practices. And they are, again, I won't outline them for you, they are there. We've outlined our mitigation. I think Andrea's done a good job explaining that, as well as Heather, in terms of what we've proposed. The affordable component. The affordable component is something that we certainly recognize a need for, and I think as the economy levels itself out, we don't know where any of that is ever going to go, what's going to be affordable and what isn't. But this will be truly affordable, and I wanted to point that out to you. All 42 units in the affordable proposed off-site will be affordable. There'll be a mix, 21 one-bedrooms, 21 two-bedrooms. Now, when I say affordable, I'm not talking affordable under 40B. Under Chapter 40B, the only thing you are required to do is provide affordable to 80% of the median wealth of the population. These will be truly affordable at 65% median wealth of the population. I think that's a very important consideration because this is going to target those who are mostly in need. The affordable component will also be tied into the municipal sewer. We're going to try to establish in the affordable component a local preference plan. Our wishes on the local preference plan would be to establish a preferential treatment, if possible and if local, under the Fair Housing Act to returning veterans from the Afghanistan War and from the Iraqi War. That I want to emphasize to you, however, is not a deal breaker. That's merely our preference. We're going to take a building that was built in 1951, if you've seen it, on 28, which has become derelict and an eyesore, and we're going to convert it into an attractive two-story building which will house these people together with amenities. I'd like to also point out to you that this project, this location of the affordable, is also an excellent location. It's located on the transportation corridor, about 150 feet back from Route 28. It's located across the street from the Barnstable Middle School and Barnstable High School. It's located almost directly across the street from the Senior Center. It's located approximately 1.25 miles from the brand new Youth Center. It's located approximately 1 mile from the Cape Cod Mall, a large year-round employer. So we feel, and we would submit to you, that both aspects of these projects will render a significant community benefit to residents not of just the immediate area, but of the Cape as a whole. Now, I've concluded what I have to say. I'll be glad to answer questions. I know the hour's getting long. Mr. Pesci would just like to give you some information regarding the engineering aspects of this project, so I'd like to introduce Mr. Pesci. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. For the record, I'm Ed Pesci, and Ron was the special counsel. I'm the special engineer in charge. I'm the project manager and civil engineer. I really don't have any major presentation to give you all. You've seen and heard a lot already. You got a tremendous care package from Andrea to try to weed through. I guess all I wanted to say was, you saw me just jump off my chair and flip through the slides with Andrea, and that's a real, I was thinking about it when I was sitting down listening. It's a real great example of how well we've worked with staff. It's been many months and a lot of meetings and a lot of time, especially for Andrea, and it's been a really good experience. They've been very, very good to work with. We've had a lot of issues to resolve, and we've gotten to this point with their help, and I want to thank them and thank Andrea especially for all their efforts. But that, subject to your questions, that's really all I have.
Mr. Taylor, was he going? No, I'm not trying to line you up the way. I just wanted to make sure you didn't forget him.
I'll take one back. I'll be quick. For the record, my name is Ron Davis. I'm part of the project team. Earlier, I did some work with the town of Barnstable on the fiscal impact of this project. And I guess to boil it down quickly, both parcels of land currently pay a total per annum tax of $31,000. Our analysis indicates that upon full completion in 2009 stabilized dollars, that the project should pay the town of Barnstable close to $800,000 per annum in taxes. We did an analysis of expected municipal costs that would be associated with the project. And because of the nature of the project being directed towards the retirement community, we expect that town of Barnstable should have net proceeds easily in the $300,000 range or above. We feel our calculations were quite conservative on this, working with the Director of Finance for the town of Barnstable and the Director of Assessment for the town of Barnstable. The second aspect is employment, which is very important to the Cape Cod and actually all across America these days. We have projected, again, upon full completion, that the project will have approximately over 100 employees, ranging from executive director down to nurses' aides. Total expected payroll is approximately $4.4 million in today's dollars. That would be coming into the Cape community. We expect that at least 85% of the permanent employees will be existing Cape residents. In the construction aspect of it, if we build the project all at once, which we do not expect to do, it would be approximately a 28-month construction project. We would have peak employment over that time period of around 269 construction people. Average closer to 170 as different trades were brought in to do different aspects of the project. We have been directed to have the greatest penetration possible of Cape construction people working on the project, and at a minimum hope to have at least 30%. Part of the issue is the size of the contractors that are required to do a project to this magnitude dictates that some of the general contractors or subcontractors may have to come from off Cape. But we've been directed by Mr. Thompson to absolutely have as many Cape vendors for supplies to the construction of the project and as many Cape residents to have those construction jobs. And lastly, I know it's been mentioned before, but any net proceeds from this project to the LaRusso Foundation will end up back in your community. That money goes only to Cape Cod, and I think that's an important aspect of this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, for the record, my name is Herb Taylor. I'm President and CEO of Deaconess Abundant Life Communities. Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission, the Deaconess has been a mission-based, community-focused, not-for-profit that has provided aging and healthcare services since the 1800s. And when the foundation, the Russo Foundation, called and asked us if we'd be interested in helping them bring this vision to the reality, we said yes, really for two reasons. One is because of what the LaRusso Foundation is all about, their demonstrated commitment to the community over the years and their clear commitment to the community in the future. That was a very important part of our consideration. Secondly, we decided to get involved because of the clear need for this project in this specific area. As has been mentioned, we are an aging population. That's true nationally, that's true regionally, and that's true locally in this area. You have a handout that I think was passed out earlier that gives a specific representation based on census data and expert kind of projection of that census data of the growth in the over 65 population in the Cape and the Islands over the next 10 and over the next 20 years. And it shows over the next 10 years an increase in that population of 40% and a similar increase 10 years after that. So it will clearly serve a need. There is a demonstrated need of people who can use the services this sort of project can provide. Again, as has been mentioned, this sort of project provides an opportunity for folks to age in place, to receive services that allow them to gain support not only physically, but socialization that has been proven in numerous studies to enable people to live longer, healthier, and more fulfilled lives and more well lives as well. So this specific type of project in this specific area is something that will make a difference in people's lives, not only in the lives of the residents that this project has the opportunity to serve, but in the lives of the community as a whole. So without going into any more detail than that, but we're glad to answer questions as we go on, this project will have a significant impact in the lives of this community, and we're glad to be able to work with the LaRusso Foundation in their commitment to this community in the time we have in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other folks that you would like to have speak? Any questions from the Commission members? Any member of the applicant's team? Are there any comments from federal? Did somebody have their hand up? Excuse me.
I got two questions on other areas. Of the 110 some odd employees, how many of those are full-time and how many will be part-time?
110 was shown. The material that we provided to the Cape Cod Commission indicates 103 employees, and the full-time equivalent is, I believe, 100. So there are very few part-time employees.
What do you mean full-time equivalent?
That means employees getting 37 and a half hours a week.
Oh, okay. I forget when I came out here that full-time isn't 40 hours in this state, I guess. So most of them will be full-time?
That's correct.
With full benefits?
That's correct.
Great. Thank you. My other question was on the housing, and this may be a Paul question if he's over there, about being able to do local preference. I'm curious how you're doing that, because I know we run into trouble in Brewster when we try to do local preference, and I don't know if that is related to where your funding is coming from or whether or not you want credit with the state. And if that's all it is, maybe this isn't pertinent at all with this project.
For the record, Paul Rachinskas, Affordable Housing Specialist. In part, it could depend on the process you go through in terms of either funding or permitting. To be clear, the regional policy plan allows a regional preference when you're doing a selection process. So that's currently our standard in the regional policy plan.
So they would be able to get 80 or even 100% local preference, meaning county countywide?
No, it'd be the same 70%, maximum of 70% county preference.
Okay.
But again, the experience that I've seen in affordable housing developments throughout the region is even with or without a local preference, the overwhelming majority of applicants or people who end up either buying or renting are people with some connection to the location in which the project is located. It's people who live there, work there, or who have family ties, kind of thing.
Great. It's also nice to see the 65%, because that group in between 65 and 80 usually is left by the wayside with large projects. So
right.
that's very nice to see.
Right. That's one of the requirements under the town of Barnstable. So either for a condominium project, which this one currently would be an ownership condominium project, the eligibility level for income-wise would be those at 65% or below.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the commission? Yes, Ms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just with regard to Elizabeth's last point, with regard to the preference, and I know Paul was speaking on that also, as a member of the subcommittee, we had some extensive conversation about that preference, and although I think members of the subcommittee advocated for regional preference, the applicant did make it very clear to us from the beginning multiple times that they really wanted to see a focus of a veteran's preference or a returning veteran's preference to the project. If it is legally and economically feasible, then that was their goal. So we had quite a spirited discussion multiple times with regard to that topic, and insofar as it's allowed, I think the applicant is vetting that with the state to find out what they're allowed to do on that.
Any other questions from anybody on the commission? All right, go on. Any comments from any federal, state, or local officials? All right, any comments from the general public? Okay, hearing none, the chair was willing to accept a motion to close the hearing and the record, if somebody should want to make that kind of a motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we close the hearing and the record. All in favor will signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous vote. Thank you. The next item that we have, the chair would be willing to accept a motion to approve the draft development agreement document as amended.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the draft development agreement document as amended. All in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? It's unanimous vote. The final vote is to authorize the commission chair or vice chair to sign on behalf of the commission, and would somebody make a motion authorizing that?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. It passes. Thank you, everybody. Mr.
Chairman, just a point of order on that. I believe.
Please come to the microphone here.
I could be mistaken, Mr. Chairman, but I believe the commission also has a draft findings that would support the draft agreement that they would have to vote upon as well.
Okay. Do we have to do that?
That is an appendix to the agreement that you just approved.
All right, we did it. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Thomas? Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Chairman?
Taylor?
Could I just make a recommendation or make a request in this day of trying to save a few trees? If some of you don't want to keep your documents anymore, I would like to take them back and I'll recycle them to the town when we go finally to the planning board. So if you'd give them to Andrea, put them back in the humongous box I gave her, I'll come and get them. Thank you.
And finally, Commission members, on behalf of the development team, we thank you for going through all this. This has been a long process, and we appreciate your consideration as well as your efforts. Thanks again.
The next thing that we have to do before we adjourn is a procedural matter, and we need to move to continue the Craigville Beach District of Critical Planning Concern implementing regulations to our October 28, 2010 meeting.
If I may, Mr. Chair, Paige Zapiga, Regulatory Officer with the Commission. I'm just here to act as a hearing officer and continue the hearing for you.
Yeah, I take some away from you. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't worry. I'm just here to inform everybody that today's hearing for the Craigville Beach DCPC implementing regulations will be procedural only. No testimony will be taken today. However, I'm here to continue this hearing to the next meeting of the full Commission on October 28th here in the Assembly of Delegates chamber at 3:00 p.m. and to inform everybody that testimony will be taken at that time. Thank you.
And we don't need to do anything.
Nope, that's it.
Well, what a relief. Anyway, thank you very much. And is there any other business? Any Cape Cod Commission member comments? The chair will accept a motion that we adjourn. Second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. And then we can go home. Thank you.